Podcast Answer Man, episode number 435.
Hi there, this is Ray Edwards from rayedwards.com, and there's only one guy I trust to answer my questions about podcasting, and that is, of course, the Podcast Answer Man, Cliff Ravenscraft.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. My name is Cliff Ravenscraft, and this, my friends, is the podcast devoted to helping you take your message, your business, and your life to the next level. That's right, my friends. It does not matter if you are brand new to this online content creating world we live in, or if you've been creating content for many years. There's something we can all do to take everything we do in life to the next level. And well, my friends, I am super delighted to bring to you another episode of Podcast Answer Man. And in this week's episode, I have yet another interview, another conversation with a podcasting A to Z alumni. One of the things that I realize is that after doing podcasting A to Z since March 2006, I've had over 530 students who have graduated from this course. It just occurred to me, why not start sharing those stories? And of course, one of the things that I've been doing lately is sharing more and more of those here in Podcast Answer Man. And I'm starting out with the folks who have done things like, 100 so episodes. And I am happy to share with you a conversation with Scott Stratten. Scott is an internationally known keynote speaker. Last year alone, he did 68 speaking engagements. He's written multiple books that are extremely popular in the business space and is considered one of the top-ranked influencers in the world of Twitter. He and his wife, Allison, have been doing the Unpodcast for 2 years now, over 100 podcast episodes. And there's a lot of valuable information and insight that you can pull out of this conversation that I'm about ready to share with you. I have a whole list of notes of things that were of interest to me while I was listening. And if you want to see that list, you can head over to podcastanswerman.com/435. And in the show notes, I'll put down the things that were interesting to me as far as the things that Scott had said. But I'm absolutely certain that as you listen to this interview that I had with Scott Stratten, you will come away with your own list of valuable takeaways. And well, rather than go on anymore, here's the interview with Scott right now. Scott, I wanted to talk to you about your journey into the world of podcasting. I know some exciting things have happened for you with CBS. I don't know where things have landed, if that's still going on. But before we get into that, I want to ask you, how did you first hear about podcasting?
Well, I've been an online kind of geek for going on 20 years now. And we certainly heard of it quite some time ago, almost a decade ago. And it was one of that really almost underground. It was one of those things where it was the Uber geeks listened to the podcasts. And a good friend of mine, Lisa, Renee Hall, who was, I think, Lisa Barnes at the time, she had writing a book about it, and she was speaking about it. And I was trying to figure it out. I'm like, well, what is it? I don't understand. It was so kind of niche that it was kind of freaked me out a bit. And so it's been a long time. So like I always said, when we started our show 2 years ago, I'm like, we're only 7 years late to the party. And long time ago.
Well, the interesting thing is that I heard about you way before you ever even considered doing a podcast. Mm-hmm. And I remember hearing your name online. We run in a lot of the same circles, us online entrepreneurial type folks. I'll never forget the very first realization that, man, you're more than just that guy I hear some of my friends talk about. I was in a Barnes & Noble looking in the business entrepreneurial section, and I find this book called Unmarketing by Scott Stratten. It's like, wait a second, I know that name. You already had this big platform, I guess through blogging and through social media and all the other things, specifically Twitter. You're known most for that, at least in the early days anyway.
Yeah. For sure.
But you already had this massive platform. Why did you finally get around 7 years later to launching a podcast? What did you hope to accomplish by creating a podcast?
Well, it was, by the time we launched the Unpodcast, we had 3 books out and, obviously a ginormous Twitter following in comparison to a lot of other places and brands, and Facebook was rocking and email was rocking. And it wasn't that, hey, let's just add another thing to do to the list. What it was looking at was, okay, so why am I blogging? Why am I doing this? And I'm notorious for not blogging. I think I blog once a quarter. I think if even that. So a couple times a year. And part of it was laziness. Part of it was writing's not my forte. I love the written word. I love writing. And actually, Allison, who's the co-host on the podcast and the co-author of On Selling, and actually the one who wrote all the books, and I just talked, and she wrote. And it wasn't my passion. And so it was like blogging was a chore for me. And I'd only blog if something epic happened. And the unmarketing brand is usually about things that go wrong in marketing and business. So unless something really hit the fan, I wouldn't blog. I'd use Twitter. I could do Twitter because it was real short, real easy, real quick. I could do this pithy stuff. Facebook, same idea. I could put up what I wanted. But blogging, I had a roadblock to it. I'm like, I'm supposed to blog. I should blog. I understand why. But it was a real chore. I rallied against content schedules and frequency. Forced frequency is something I've always talked about on stage, which is you have to blog every week or every Tuesday. And I've been years in multiple books, I've said that's a mistake. Yet here's a guy now that we've recorded over 100 episodes, and I've done it every week for 2 years. And why? And this is the real reason why. I realize we love to talk. And Allison and I love to talk. It's a different type of format than a lot where we don't have guests. We just talk about what's going on that week in business screw up. So we'll never have a lack of content. But we realized not only is she the co-host of the show and the co-author of the books, but she's also my wife. So, we love the fact that we talk every day about this stuff. We just stuck up microphones in front of us and realized we really love doing stuff together. We really love working together. And the issue in our business was that if we weren't writing a book, it was just me kind of going on stage, because that's how we really make a living is I do keynote speaking. So between books, we didn't get a lot of that collaboration we wanted to do. And a book takes a huge amount of work, 60, 70,000 words a book. We did 4 of them. And we didn't want to do a book just so we could do something again. So we realized 2 years ago that this podcast thing could work. And man, if it's not the thing we love the most out of everything, it's so good. We're actually going into the studio tomorrow. So we rent a studio in the town beside us in Burlington, Ontario, and we rent it for the day, and we record 4 episodes at a time. So we kind of pretty much a month's worth of episodes at a time. We have a video crew and an audio engineer and a hair and makeup person, and people bring in lunch. And so it's like an event for us to record these things. And man, part of me says I wish we did it a long time ago, but the other side says, this was the right time, both for us and I think for the industry.
I love that. So if you don't mind me asking some questions here, and I'll edit out any questions you don't want to answer so that I had never actually asked you the question in the interview.
Sure. I've never been asked a question I haven't answered yet, so give it a try.
So how much do you spend, would you say, on the whole renting a studio for a day in a town nearby with the makeup person coming in and all that stuff? How much of an expense is that?
So we look at it. We have all that, plus we have a person that does the post of the show. They're the ones that coordinate the uploading and the writing about the session and setting it out on time. So really, it's literally that set it and forget it. We go in, sit down, talk, and we go home, and that's it. We never do anything else with the podcast. So I'd say about per year, we're probably at about $50,000. So we're about just under $1,000 an episode, I'd say. And that's and that was from day one. That was before we got a sponsor. We've had a sponsor now for about seven months or so, which is Emma Email Marketing, and we spent that from day one.
Would you say that the sponsorship is that covering the cost of that?
No, I don't mind telling you how everything works. It's so we signed on Emma to they signed on for the full year. A year as the kind of platinum or lead sponsor, whatever you want to call it. And they get a certain amount of things with that. The logo's in the album cover and it's in the video. We do a couple of live reads in the show. And so we get $150,000 a year for that. And with that, it's split 50-50 with CBS, who has the audio distribution rights for it. So we certainly cover the costs and make some pocket change, some spending money on top of that as well.
And the opportunity for you to have this collaboration with your wife and also to promote your brand in a way that is more along the lines of your passion of communicating through the spoken word because you're a keynote speaker, and also it allows you to consistently reach your community of people that you've been building this brand around, and it allows you to get that exposure for ongoing future potential gigs.
Exactly.
So I do recall when you launched your show, the Unpodcast, you had launched another podcast about Vegas. Tell us a little bit about that. And is that show still going? And if not, why?
So we recorded called the Vegas 30, which was Vegas for people over 30, because it's a place that's really different when you're 38 than when you're 21. And there's, but Alice and I adore Vegas. We're looking at condos there right now. We combined, we've been there over 100 times. And we know one of the reasons people don't like it is because of all the, Vegas, all the stuff that goes on. But there's so much more to Vegas than kind of the gambling and the madness and the drinking. So we started recording that. We simply said, what do we want to talk about that's our passion? It was two things. It was the on-marketing type of stuff, and it was Vegas. So we started recording both simultaneously. And we recorded, I think, 14 episodes of the Vegas one. That was never meant to be an ongoing show. That was meant to kind of have a body of work that each episode was topical. So one episode was playing poker in Vegas. The next one was best places to eat in Vegas. Next one was off the strip in Vegas. Next one is first time in Vegas. What should you do? So each had a topic. And we never meant to do that weekly, and so we didn't. I've always said you create content when you have something to say. And we never wanted to force it for either show. So the Vegas one was at that. We're still getting some people are kind of giving us the gears because we haven't come out with a new episode of Vegas in a long time. And because that's the expectation of a podcast, it'll come out weekly. But we just don't want to have a show for the sake of a show. We don't live in Vegas. We're not there. We're looking at potentially re-recording it and doing it again because it's been a couple years now and things have changed. So we were thinking about updating it. We're thinking about recording it and videotaping it in Vegas. So we love doing it. That's one thing about podcasting. You pick a topic you're passionate about, and it's not work. We just love talking about it. And we've got great responses. People listen to it on their flight to Vegas is very cool. And we get some of it. So it's a passion project for us for sure. We could talk about it until the cows come home. But we, on purpose, said this was not going to be a continual show because we knew it doesn't have the content to keep going.
So did you decide when you started how many episodes you would produce in advance?
Not at all. No, we just said, okay, we hit episode 12. We're like, that's good for now. And then we did a couple other episodes a month or two later as like trip updates. We went there and we discovered new things. One of the challenges was we would record the Unpodcast and the Vegas one on the same day. So if we wanted, it's economics. If we wanted to record a month's worth of the Unpodcast, because the fixed cost is studio and the people, that if the more episodes we can fit in the day, the less our kind of total episode cost would be for each episode. So we were recording like 4 on podcasts or 2 on podcasts and 2 Vegas ones, and then come back every other week. And the problem is with our schedule, it's really hard to carve it out. I'm on the road. Last year I did 68 keynotes in 2015. So I'm on the road a lot. And we have 5 kids, 4 of which are at home. One's off in college. And so us coordinating stuff and scheduling stuff, it was not working at the time to say, twice a month. So we figured once a month, and if we dropped off the Vegas one for the time being, then we could drop that. And that's what we ended up doing.
The one thing that comes to my mind, it reminds me of the virtual assistant podcast that I did. When I launched it, I did not anticipate how many episodes I would do. I just wanted to share my journey of learning how to use a virtual assistant and learning about delegation and the whole process, this world. And so I started that. I even got a sponsor from episode number 1. And I made it to when I got around episode number 33, 34, I started to find myself scratching any surface for content.
Right. Yeah, that's the problem. That's a big problem. That's a big problem where you start reaching.
Yeah, and so what I decided to do was right around then I said, okay, I'm going to go to 38 episodes, which will take me to the end of December of 2010. And for these final episodes, I'm going to come up with great content, but I'm going to announce in every single one of those final episodes that these are the final episodes. We're wrapping this thing up. But I used it as a tool to cross-promote something else that I knew would be ongoing, which for me is the podcast Answer Man. But it sounds to me like this was just a passion project for you. It wasn't something to help lead towards some other ultimate end.
Not at all. All it did was create more people emailing us for custom trip itineraries. You know that people. so that wasn't. We just love it. Absolutely love it. We're ambassadors for the place. And one of the nice things about that show, one of the things about not being successful, meaning like we didn't go 100 episodes and we're coming to you live from the top of the Mandalay Bay or something, was that we actually on purpose avoided trying to get sponsors for that show because we wanted to give you the unrestrained, uncensored feedback of what we were disappointed with. Serendipity, the restaurant outside of Caesars, and we love Caesars, and we were disappointed with it, and we could say that. Now, if Harrah's Caesars sponsored the show, do you think we could say that? That's where you get. It's a whole nother world. It's almost like a whole nother interview for you and I is talking about the delicacy of sponsorships, where once you take that money, there's an expectation where at the very least, you're not going to badmouth them.
Yeah.
And that's where it came with Vegas, was we saw what we could do with it. We know our strengths. We know what we can do, and we know we can talk, and we have passion. And when you can talk and express that passion, it's an amazing thing. But we didn't want Vegas to become a business for us. It was just not, the timing wasn't right. And I think you have to be willing sometimes, like you did with the virtual assistant one, what we did with the Vegas 30 was you got to be willing sometimes to walk away from things. It's not a failure. It's actually smart. It's a good thing for business to say, where are we focusing? What's the priority right now? I know we can do these things, but I don't want to be spread too thin. I want to have our focus on this. So like tomorrow, and I'm already giddy in anticipation of going to the studio with Allison tomorrow, we take all month gathering stories. We go to the studio. And one of the reasons we go to the studio, because we could do it here. We could do it at home. We could do it. I took your course. I know those things to do. One of the biggest reasons we go to the studio is focus. That we are going there to do the show. That is, we have 2 dogs and 3 cats at home on top of the kids. We have all these things. We're like, when we go to the studio, it's about one thing. It's about the show, and that's all we're doing.
That is awesome. I love that. I love that approach. It sounds appealing, and sometimes I'm thinking, I wonder if I could do something like that. But you know what? I'm addicted. I must say, I love the control of every aspect of everything. So I'm a little bit of a control freak. I like to go in and do all my own post-production editing. And
here's the flip side of that, though. I had to realize, as a lifelong entrepreneur, the biggest bottleneck to productivity and success for me is me.
Yes.
That my talent is this. My talent is on stage talking. My talent is behind a microphone talking. My talent is not work. If that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, you wouldn't farm out, going to your scenario, you personally wouldn't farm out somebody else creating your entire outline for a keynote, right?
Exactly. That's the thing, is I take what my strengths and I focus on them, and I find my weaknesses and I pay them.
Exactly. And so it makes sense for me to kind of do my own thing because it keeps me up to date with what's changing. And
Exactly. I would not have somebody go by proxy and do a keynote for me. They wouldn't be, and they wouldn't do the technical behind it either. Nobody touches that for me.
Exactly. Let's talk about the Unpodcast. Where'd you come up with the name, and who is your target audience for that show?
So the Unpodcast is just, our brand is everything. So we wrote unmarketing and unselling, and it's just the world for us. The Unpodcast just made sense. Now, we're actually in a crossroad right now of debating whether or not we want to change the name. And that because of we partially believe that the term podcast can actually turn some people away from the format in the general public side of things. That because we make it a show, because we do a full, not only audio, but a full 3-camera video shoot with a team, that sometimes when we say podcast to the general public, I talk about the show at every keynote I do. At the end of the keynote, we put up a big banner of it and talk about it. And the feedback I get is, well, I don't do that podcast thing. And I'm like, you don't listen or watch a show? They're like, oh yeah, I do that, but I don't do that. I don't understand the podcast thing. So we're debating right now whether or not people in the industry, great. People who already listen to them, perfect. It's awesome. The name, attracts people. It's the business show for the fed up. That's what the tagline is. So that works for us. But when we're looking at kind of the next steps for the show after 100 episodes, there's a debate right now for us. We're trying to figure out whether or not we want to depart from the word podcast in the show itself. Because if we had a different name, it would be in the podcast section of iTunes and different formats. But we're trying to reach an audience more than understands the actual medium. So that's a debate for us. So we did the Unpodcast was because of and we are reaching pretty much people in business, a lot of marketers, because a lot of the teams are, a lot of the messages and themes are about bad marketing. So it tends to lend itself to marketers, but anybody who's been fed up with businesses doing it wrong.
Of course, this debate has been going on for many years as far as the term of podcasting. I think that one of the interesting things is that podcasting and its understanding among the mainstream culture is getting better as we move forward each new year. Certainly, things helped with Serial and some other things this past year. Mark Maron having the president on certainly helped move the needle forward in that area. But I certainly understand where you're coming from. There's still so much path to pave, if you will. Two names that immediately pop up for me. Obviously, you could stay pretty close to what you have and be the Unshow, or Unbusiness also would be a great fit for you.
Right. There's the Unshow, the Unbroadcast. There's all. Then we thought of, did we depart from Un and call it? We kept on. We're thinking of Unsolicited Feedback. Is also one of the names of the show. Still keeping Un in there, but actually, it really kind of sums up the entire show. Nobody asked us for what we think about these things, and we're just going to tell you anyways. So that's leading the charge right now is Unsolicited Feedback, but we'll see.
How do you and Allison prepare for a show? I know that you say you pick up some stories and kind of build them as you go and everything like that, but let's talk about either the day of or maybe the day or two before. What kind of things are you doing to prepare for that day of recording?
Sure, I can give it to you almost in real time. So we're going into the studio tomorrow. So the second we leave the studio a month ago, I create a new list on my phone, just on my notepad on my iPhone. That's like this month is called Links 11 because I've been doing this way for 11 months now. And all I do is in my travels online through Facebook, through Alice and I talking back and forth, through friends sending it to us, to people dropping us suggestions on the Unmarketing Facebook page. I just keep a running list of links, numbered 1 through, usually at the end of the month, it's 30 or 40 links in there that I think, or that Allison thinks would be relevant for us to talk about and discuss on the show. And then, so tonight, what I'll do tonight around 8 or 9 o'clock is I'll just go through and print all those stories. We use a program called Clean Print, which is great. It allows you to pull out visuals and ads and pictures and just gets the core text down, so you save paper at the same time, and it makes it much more easier to read. We then print them all out, and then tomorrow, either tonight or tomorrow, on the way to driving to the studio, Allison will go through the articles and pick which ones kind of fit together, which ones have their own, and try to come up with 4 shows worth of content. And then we kind of just put aside the ones that didn't make the cut. Maybe we'll revisit them later. And then we don't discuss it beforehand. We don't go, okay, you're going to take this side, I'll take this side. We sit down. I get my makeup, my hair done because I'm a diva. And we get ready. We pull into the studio around 10:30. It's already all set up for us. Our crew we've worked with the entire time for 2 years now. So Atomic Spark, Adam at the video, he's got all the cameras already set up. Wayne's got the audio all set up. And our makeup person's all there. We have my coordinator of awesome, Karen, who's been with us for 10 years now, who's my kind of right hand in the business. She drops off lunch at noon. It comes in. We record 2 episodes before lunch, 2 episodes afterwards. And there's no script, really. We just let the stories go and flow with what we're going on. We've now recently brought in a kind of a monitor behind us in the shot and video. So Adam brings up different visuals depending on the story that's coming up. It also allows us to bring up the Emma logo for the sponsor readout. But really, we don't do scripting. It's really on the fly. My entire job between recording is finding things to talk about.
You record this as a video podcast primarily, but do you also release the audio as well?
Yeah, so it's actually the majority of people who listen to it and consume it is still audio. So it's recorded in the studio, but it's a separate audio feed that then our video team takes that actual audio from the soundboard and puts it into the video itself. So it still is fully kind of pushed as an audio show. We just have the video for it, and we just found that's so much better for a sponsor. They want the visuals there. And then we kind of splice it sometimes and put clips onto the Unmarketing Facebook page and kind of promote it through there as well. And so it is audio. We signed with CBS about a year ago now, which CBS was launching their new podcast platform called Play.it. And they approached us and says, do you want to be one of the main business podcasts? And I'm like, what's the catch? Like, it was actually hilarious how the whole process worked, because Karen, again, the coordinator of Awesome for our company, she's the wall for email. So anything that comes in, she checks first, and it has to get through her to get to me. And so if you emailed, then usually she'd let you through, and maybe not always. So so what happens? She forwarded it to me, and I saw this thing. I'm like, I don't even know what it is. I just assumed, for being around as long as you and I have been in this digital world, I'm assuming these guys are pitching us paying to be on their network. That's what I was assuming, because I've dealt with that so much in every different format of media. And I'm like, well, what's the catch? And then she writes them back, and they're like, nothing. We just want them to be part of the show. I'm like, okay, well, so what's the deal? And they're like, 50-50 split of ad revenue, and this is how it works. And we went through the contract and decided, and I know I've jumped into this before you asking, but I think it's a big part of how the audio gets out there. We took the contract, we changed it. My brother's in the music business in Texas, so I sent him the contract, and he said they actually wanted to own the show for that year, and we just gave them the exclusive audio distribution rights instead. And then we kind of went from having it on Libsyn and our own place and launching it through there to actually going through CBS's platform. So now we're actually up, I think, this week or so. So, then now is our decision. Do we want to renew? What do we want to do with it?
So CBS approached you. First thing I want our audience to hear is the fact that they sent you a contract to review. It sounded pretty interesting. You figure, why not? Let's go with it.
Yeah.
But I love the fact, and of course, this is something that I've dealt with over the years with podcast networks that have approached me. You don't ever have to take their boilerplate contract and sign it and give everything away. You can always change those things, and they're always going to be willing to make those concessions to bring you on if your content is valuable enough to them.
You're actually hurting yourself if you sign right away. That every person in classical business expects a negotiation. That's the entire point. That's the actual contract law, is the offer, a negotiation, back and forth, and then signed. Like, that's how it works. Did you have a chance to counter? And so when I looked at that, I'm like, I don't like. But the problem is, and here's the thing: when a legacy name like CBS comes to you and says, we want you to be on our new network, and you get stars in your eyes. We were excited. You're like, because it gives you, regardless of what you think of whether they understand the podcasting world or digital or anything else, that's a legacy media name that we were going to immediately put in our bio and put out there just to make it, because it makes us sound great. But you can't let that blind you. You've got to look at it saying, are you signing away your content, your work, your life's work for stuff? And so we came back to them and said, take this out, and change this. And they wrote back and said, you got it.
I love that. So what came first, CBS or Emma?
CBS did. Three reasons you sign with a media company like CBS. One is to get the name CBS so you can use it and leverage it. Two is to try to increase your audience size. And three is to try to get advertisers. One of the biggest things was CBS Local was actually the arm of CBS that would be doing the Play.it network. So they had all these local affiliates, and their job was they're taking all the ad people from TV and radio and shifting them over to the podcasting. So we'd have the benefit of having a sales team trying to sell the show. So what happened is, it actually happened through a tweet, amazingly enough. So we were with CBS, we're on their network, and there was a tweet about a conference coming up called Marketing United. This is last year, and Emma Email was running it, and I saw them announcing a couple keynotes. Friends of mine, Jay Baer and Ann Handley, were keynoting. So I just wrote back and said, that's some great keynotes. And Emma, the account, wrote back and said, speaking of keynotes. And then we got an email 5 minutes later from our contact form saying, hey, we're wondering if Scott would come keynote as well. Also, is the sponsorship still open for the show? And it turns out they've been following us for 3 years or so, just loving the work, and they were kind of looking to get into the sponsorship side of things. And just so happened that we started talking about sponsorship on the show. And so they came. So we actually brought in the advertiser, and instead of CBS bringing it to us. And so we just but we also know that signing with CBS certainly helped that type of thing. Whether it's you're justifying it to the person who's making the decision to sponsor or the higher ups there, either way, it gets instant clout to the people who are talking about sponsoring or not. So that really worked. And here's the thing, one of the other benefits, because we've actually gone down there in Nashville. We've visited them a couple of times. We've done things at their office. We love hanging out. They've been amazing. That it's played into the fact that from episode 1, we look and we sound like we know what we're doing and we belong and professional, because you want to look like you've had a sponsor for 10 years, even if you're just starting episode 1. That was a big part, because once a sponsor lends their name to it, then that's their brand as well.
As I'm thinking about your contract, one of the things that I have seen in a lot of contracts and what I usually tend to negotiate on is the idea of, if they bring the sponsor, then we have this split. If I bring the sponsor in and I negotiate that initial contact and convince them, then there's, I get more of that.
Yeah, so we did that with, it's like whoever brought it in gets a commission. So whoever brought the sale in gets 15% of the full deal, and the rest is split. So pretty much same idea. So if we brought them in, we get, in theory, not really kind of, but 65%, and they would get 35. And if they did it, it'd be the other way around, they'd get the other deal. So
okay.
We did have a incentive to bring it in. But what happened was, so we brought in the key sponsor, the platinum one. And one of the benefits of being with CBS is they gave us a rate card. And they showed us, here's everything they'd get, here's all the impressions, here's all the things, and here's the amount. And it was, $150,000. And before that, I'm like, I have no idea what you charge for a sponsorship. Like, what, $11? I don't know what you charge for a sponsorship. We're just making it up, like everything else we're doing. So them giving us, I swear, we would never say $150,000 if it wasn't for CBS's guidance with that and their reach. And we originally thought, before we got them, we were thinking about $1,000 an episode. And that was actually just because we figured out costs of our show. And originally we're like, we just want to cover costs. And then once we got bigger and thinking about it and the commitment we could give, then that made another step. So when Emma signed with us, not only were they sponsoring the show and the audio, because the CBS sponsorship offer was for the audio. So we gave them the video as well, sponsoring-wise, and a keynote at their event. Plus, we'd done webinars for them. We've gone down 2 months ago and did a live Q&A thing, we call it the Live on Podcast, for their customers and stuff. So one of the things about sponsors, it was just like we try to go above and beyond for them. And the flip side of that is, since we brought in the main sponsor, CBS would start bringing in smaller ones and local ones that would only pay a CPM. They would put, cost per listener. So they would have a sponsor giving us literally $112, like for a month. And they would want equal billing as Emma, as our main sponsor. And we told CBS a few months ago, I'm like, we don't want any more. We don't want any more advertisers. We don't want anything brought from you. We're only doing Emma. And because they paid a whole year. We had other sponsors come to us and say, well, can we do it for a test trial for 3 months? Can we do this? And they're like, we're committing to you. We believe in the show. We're on for a year.
How's Emma feel about the sponsorship and what they've gotten out of it?
They're ecstatic. We're like best friends every week. Obviously, you'd have to ask them, but we just had lunch with them a month ago. We're doing so much with them because we kept bringing ideas to them. I'm going back to Keynote again in April. And right before we go to NAB, right before we go to the broadcasting show in Vegas, we're stopping in Nashville to do a keynote and a live on podcast. And we pitched to them a week ago, why don't we do a contest for it? And we will fly 2 people. We'll fly them to the event. We'll put them up. We'll have dinner with them at the Peg Leg barbecue place that we love in Nashville, or the Mexican place, depending on a person's dietary needs, and full conference passes, hotel, flight. We just pitched it to them. We thought it would be a fun idea, and they were over the moon with it. So I think if it was just kind of, here's our listeners this month and number, and thanks for sponsoring, it wouldn't be as excitable. But since we actually wear their T-shirts on every show, with the Emma logo on it, we actually take Emma coasters and we tape them to the microphones so they look like kind of Emma microphones. So we really, we have the contract, that base is fulfilled, but we've actually gone 10 times above that. So our job is to keep them as happy as possible for as long as possible.
I love that, because in negotiations with sponsors, even in my own personal experience and what I've seen with other podcasters, what we struggle with is how much do we charge for a sponsor? And oftentimes it's like, well, there's obviously the potential of basing it upon covering costs, which you had had at least thought about at one point. The other one is, well, how much value are they going to get? I mean, what kind of return of investment? How are they measuring that? And sometimes you just want to say, well, I guess it's important and it's on me to make sure that whatever they're paying me, they get at least that much, if not much more in return financially. But
we actually take some of the money we actually reinvest it. We actually start advertising the show with their logo on it on a couple sites and a couple other shows. And our job is just to make them realize this is the best decision we could have made with our marketing dollars this year. And that's, so when we hopefully come up for time for renewal, they're just like, of course, why would you even ask? And the problem is a lot of the times, I know business has to do with cost and your profit margin and everything, but I realized that your cost has nothing to do with your value to them at all. So if your cost to produce a show is zero or next to zero because you do it in your own setup and on your own, that does not mean your value to an advertiser is zero. There's no relation to it to me. And the problem is if you underprice your sponsorship, that actually reflects your sponsorship.
Yes.
So if a brand comes to you and says, we're looking at sponsoring your show for a month, what's your rate? And you say, I don't know, how's $50? They're like, I don't think we should do this.
Yeah.
It's true. It's like when I became a keynote speaker. I'm the same speaker when I used to charge $4,000 that I am today when I charge $20,000. But I am 20 times more valuable to these people that pay the big bucks for it because there's a perception there.
Not only is there a perception, but really you do probably go out of your way more. I mean,
for sure.
You probably spend more time in preparation, more time, because it does motivate you and inspire you to take even deeper action on their behalf.
100%. It's absolutely, we don't even think about doing it. We're like, what else can we do for them? What else can we do for them? We sent them baskets at Christmas and we wear their shirts. And we actually did a live with an audience for episode 100. We had an audience come in for the show and sit around like Def Leppard in the 90s. They sat around the table and we had 40 people in the room and we gave away Emma t-shirts and stuff like that. So it was like, just involving, and that really is what I think sponsorship is too, is making them almost part of the show without being cheesy. That we've talked to people who are dedicated listeners and they're like, it's just so seamless with them because we just work the live read into it. People know the show opens with their name in it and it becomes part of the show. It's part of the brand, and that's really important.
What would you say is the most rewarding thing about doing a podcast? It sounds to me like you've got over 100 episodes. There's no end in sight that I can tell. You're enjoying this. What is the most rewarding reason why you do what you do with your podcast?
It's working with Allison. It really is. I just love her, and the ability for us to throw things back and forth, and that other people are going to get to see how great it is incredible for me. It gets my mind going, and we have so much fun. And the opportunity, we're still giddy going into the studio, and it's been 2 years now. I can't wait. I never thought something would even come close to the feeling I get on stage, and this certainly does. I love it, and also getting to listen and watch myself is always a fantastic time. But it's actually one of the other parts of it on the external side of things. It's the listenership. We've never had a fan base be so dedicated, to be so in it than a podcast listenership. And this is, coming from a company here that we've, again, 4 books that we've got, people loved, and marketing came out and blew the lid off things. And, I get standing ovations sometimes when I do keynotes. Like I get all this feedback from people, but man, podcast listeners they're into it. They love it. And if you miss an episode, they let you know. Like it's just a very cool thing. And it's the only time I've ever stayed in front of anybody with frequency. And that's been really cool too.
Yeah, there's something hardcore about the loyalty of a podcast audience and the fact that you're influencing them in their lives. If you're there every week and you're talking for 40 minutes to an hour every single week, I mean, there's a good chance that busy couples, you might actually be speaking and having more influence in the lives of the people who are listening to you than their own spouse at times.
Oh, huge, right? Because it's really intimate, right? Where people, you think about when people are consuming the show audio wise, they're on their way to work, or they're walking the dog, or they're working out, and you're the only thing in their ear. And it's a pretty good setting to be in, and it's funny sometimes the feedback we get, and that our first ever comment on a show It was our first show. Actually, we actually went 59 minutes, and we just started talking. And our first comment was 59 minutes. I actually haven't listened to the show yet, but 59 minutes? Come on! Like that was the first ever comment we got on a show, and like we just didn't have a set time. So now, once we signed with CBS, we were contractually obligated to be at least 30 minutes, and we realized we were going for almost an hour sometimes before. But we were starting to get really tired at the end of the studio day when we did 4 episodes, 4 hours of recording. So we realized we could actually take this content into a half hour or so and make it, since we have no theme for the most part, we don't have an episode and a topic for each one, we really can just cut it after 30, 32 minutes and go, that's good. That's a good one. And then jump into the next one. So that's the absolute glory of having no flow and whatsoever, no topic basis. We can cut and go. We realized it's much better for us. We don't get tired out. We don't get burnt out. So we do about 30, 35 minutes a show and have a total of 2 hours or so of recording instead of over 4. And but we had to adjust that. We had to adjust that going into it.
My target audience are folks who are entrepreneurial, small business-minded individuals out there who are considering launching a podcast. Now, several of them already have a podcast, but specifically those who are on the fence. They've been thinking about podcasting. That's why they just started tuning in maybe within the last couple of weeks of this podcast. To those people who are on the fence and they're getting ready to launch a podcast, what's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who is just starting out? Some advice that you wish maybe you would have received when you were just getting launched.
Am I allowed to tell them just to take your course? Is that okay? Does that work? You didn't tell me to.
It wasn't what I'm fishing for, but I mean,
no, I know.
It.
But this is the thing. I didn't have one until I took your course, and this is. I promise you. You understand that people listening right now. My brand is the no BS world. That I only say what I think, and you've got to have accountability though. When you run your own thing, when you run your own show, you have no boss. That's good, and that's terrible. Because you have no accountability, you have nothing. And one of the things that your course did was just, it gave you modules. It gave you things, okay, what this next one and this next one, and you did it and you created it and it removed those roadblocks. And that was huge. That was huge. And what I got from you from that whole thing, those pieces of advice, like I got all those things so I didn't have to go in and it's almost like I can't say right now what I would have done differently because there isn't anything. Because of taking the course. Now that's got to be the greatest unsolicited testimonial of all time I can possibly give somebody. But here's the thing: I didn't even take your course to take the course. I got it so I could get access to you, so I could ask you questions about it. I remember we had an email. I'm like, can we hire you on? You're like, well, I just do this course, and I'm like, I'll pay whatever it is, and just to be part of it. And I ended up going through the course, and I don't even have to use this stuff because we have a whole crew. But it's like the entrepreneur learning accounting basics. I'm not going to be the accountant, but I need to know what's going on with my money. And that was we for podcasting. So I understand every function of what's going on and around me. So I know I don't want to be doing those things and I want to have the experts come in. So that was a huge, huge thing for me. I wouldn't change anything else because we did it on our own terms, our own conditions. I wouldn't change it. It's worked out so well. I wouldn't change anything at all.
I appreciate that. And what's really cool is I know for a fact that anybody who's hearing your voice, they do know that you're the no BS guy and that there's no way I could have even paid you to say those words.
No, but you know what I think, and you said this during the course as well, and on the subsequent Facebook group for members was, you got to be careful with looking at numbers. That like most people, I have that problem. When a book launches, I keep refreshing Amazon sales rank. And when we launch a podcast, I keep going to Libsyn and checking how many listens. And that doesn't dictate how good you are. It's a number. And that was the nice thing about moving to CBS is I lost all access to those numbers. So I couldn't check them every day. And it was driving Allison batty. So that was a good thing.
Awesome. That is great advice. Don't obsess over the numbers because any amount of time that you spend focusing on how many people are currently listening and using that as a vanity rank, that's time taken away from you creating even greater content for the next episode or building a deeper relationship with the people who are already listening.
Exactly.
Well, Scott, where can people find the Unpodcast and any other thing that you want to promote?
on podcasts. Just, look it up where good podcasts are sold. So wherever you listen, you can go to onpodcast.com. It takes you right to the website and it's there, but you can do it on YouTube. We have the whole video series on YouTube, or you can download and listen anytime. Show comes out every Wednesday from now until they take us off the air.
That's awesome. Scott, thank you so much, my friend. And I wish you many blessings in 2016.
All right, Cliff, thanks for having me on.
Well, there you go, my friends. That was my conversation with Scott Stratten over at the Unpodcast. Go check him out, unpodcast.com. Friends, I just want to remind you that my next session of Podcasting A to Z is coming up on Monday, March 14th, 2016. If you are looking to launch a podcast, I'd love to have this opportunity to be your personal coach, walking you through every step in the process. Head over to podcastingatoz.com for more details. And well, I want to go ahead and share one more plug here at the end of this episode, and it is for my other weekly podcast that I do. It's called The Cliff Ravenscraft Show. If you're not aware of this, I have a whole other podcast that I do every week where I give you the behind-the-scenes action of what goes on in building my own business, building my own brand, my own thought process of the products and services that I create, the pricing, the mindset of what goes into thinking about how to do business and to improve your marketing and all of those other things. And also, how does that balance with being a husband and a father, and how do you fit in time for your health and fitness? All of those kinds of things and more, all of that over at the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. If you're not already a subscriber to that podcast, I invite you to go over to your favorite podcast directory and do a search for The Cliff Ravenscraft Show. Well, thank you again so much for tuning in to Podcast Answer Man. And until next week, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level.
Helping you take everything you do to the next level.